Welcome to the Heal Yourself podcast, where we dive deep into all things healing. I'm Denise, a speech language pathologist and a self-love coach for adults and teens.
And I'm Kira, a traditional naturopath and functional nutritionist, and we are here to guide you through the transformative process of healing your body, mind, and soul.
From the latest in functional medicine to nurturing your relationship with yourself, healing trauma, and even transforming your money story, we're here to empower you with the knowledge and tools to create lasting change.
So whether you're looking to heal physically, emotionally, or spiritually, join us as we explore the many paths to wholeness and wellness. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I have a special guest for you who I will introduce in just a moment. Unfortunately, Denise could not be with us, but it's still going to be a great episode. So today, I'm talking to Dina-Marie, who's the creator of Way of the Founder, a dynamic space where personal growth, spiritual exploration, and business leadership converge to help visionary nomads, expats, and other transplants build location-independent businesses with purpose. An expat nomad of 10 years and professional coach for over 5 years, Dina-Marie empowers entrepreneurs to stop trading time for money and build businesses that align with their wildest dreams of freedom and impact. And before I say welcome, Dina, I want to say, even if you are not a business owner, it is okay. I still want you to listen to this episode. There's going to be lots for you. So Dina, welcome.
Hello, happy to be here.
Yeah, so happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know we chatted just a moment before recording, but your story is intriguing. I love it. But I think, like I mentioned, even though you're geared towards entrepreneurs, this is going to help so many people regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And really for me, my whole life, whether it was as a kid, as a dancer, as a 9 to 5 person, or as an entrepreneur, my North Star has always been, how can I have more freedom? And how can I have an actual impact and be fulfilled doing the thing that I want to be doing? Right? And it sounds super aspirational, right? Like, wait a minute, you want to have a fulfilling life and a great impact and have the choice to burn it all down and start over all at the same time in the same lifetime? Yeah, I kind of do.
Yeah.
I really do. And with that North Star has always come the courage for me to, like I just said, burn it all down, right? I grew up in Germany. I'm originally from Germany, and I had an amazing opportunity to come to the United States and study there. And with that, my professional background has really become orchestra management. So I was in the weeds, I was fundraising, I was planning community engagement events for classical orchestras. And what always excited me most about my work in the office was the work I could do outside the office, where I could work with aspiring musicians or with professional musicians who were aspiring entrepreneurs. Who were like, Dina, I have this idea. And I think it's going to make a huge impact on the community that I care about. I just don't know the business. Can you help me? Right? And fast forward, I'm sure we'll get into why and how I quit my job and how that all turned into me being a nomad now and living in Da Nang for the time being. But fast forward, I work as a coach with those who seek more freedom in their lives, specifically more freedom of choice. That might look like becoming or being a nomad. That might look like being a nomad and wanting to quit your job and build your own business. That might look like, I just want to have the choice to work from a different state or from out of the country for a month or 3 months a year, right? So freedom, if we really look at it, just like success, we really look at it, we all have a different definition for it. Mm-hmm. We tend to all pursue the same definition, and that's a problem that I'm sure we'll get into. But if we really look at it, and if we really return to our most authentic, most loving self, we all have a different idea for what success or freedom are meant to look, feel like, and taste like, right? So that's what I do with my clients. I help them build the life that's truly authentic to them, wildly fulfilling, and massively impactful. Because when you are happy, if you become happy and fulfilled, that has a ripple effect. The work that you do in the world, if you do it from a place of authenticity, it has an amazing and a positive and a loving ripple effect. And that's what I'm really interested in. That's my guiding star.
Yeah, well, and it's such a powerful thing too, because I think it's so easy to take one path in life and be like, well, I'm here, so I'm just going to stick with it. And I think so many are lacking purpose and passion in their lives. And then they're wondering why they're chronically ill. Like, yeah, that can be a factor. If you're not living out your life's purpose and you're just going through the motions and pleasing others and I'm just going to my 9 to 5. Yeah, it's no wonder you're, dealing with ongoing stuff. And freedom, like you said, means different things to different people. That's actually my number one value. So I always talk
Yeah.
to clients about are we even working from our values? Do we know what our values are? If your
Right.
value is freedom and you're not living a freedom-based life, whatever that looks like, again, good luck.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think, when it comes to just sort of going through the motions and realizing that you're actually not living or living towards your purpose, I think it's easy to say, oh yeah, like I want to do something that's on purpose for me. But if we really look at the mindset of it, more often than not, I find that in working with my clients, there is a real identity shift that has to happen if you're looking to switch careers, if you're looking to change your tax status, aka leave your 9 to 5 and become an entrepreneur, right? Because more often than not, we identify with the path towards success that has been laid out for us. If we follow that, I will be lovable. If I follow that path of success, I will be worthy of fill in the blanks love, right? So there is some real inner work that has to take place more often than not, where we can reclaim the source of love, right? More often than not, as children, at some point, that source gets given away to someone, to something, to a source outside ourselves. And if we make that source happy, maybe then we'll be seen as successful. Maybe then we'll seen as lovable, right? So the path out of a 9 to 5, or even if you stay in a 9 to 5, you switch your career and you rearrange your life for purpose, that path inevitably has come across the point where you take back control. I describe to my clients, you take back the remote control over your feelings and you say, no, I'm the one who's pushing the buttons because I know that I'm responsible for my happiness. That means others don't get to have control over that. And that's easier said than done. But however uncomfortable that journey may be, it's also one of the most rewarding journeys that I've personally ever gone on.
Yeah, so I can relate. I was a 9 to 5. I was a middle school English teacher for years and then made the leap myself. So, yeah, tell us a little bit. How did you get to that place? Like, what caused you to leave your job and go down this road?
The year is 2019. Well, yeah, it was 5, almost 6 years ago when I had spent over a decade following a path not only of predefined and predetermined success, but a path that I hoped would help me gain my parents' approval and validation, right? There was a lot of chaos in my early childhood, and that sort of had me end up in a place where uncertainty wasn't really something I gelled with, right? So I always made sure that I knew the next step, and I always made sure that I had tunnel vision on that next step, because feeling all of the feelings from my past, from my childhood, feeling all of the trauma, allowing all of the feelings in, that felt really chaotic, really overwhelming. It felt like it might drown me. It didn't, but took a lot of damn courage to let them back in, right? So it felt easier, it felt more comfortable to follow someone else's path towards success. And so I did, right? I graduated, I went to the US. That was unconventional, I'll say that. I went to the US as an international student on a full scholarship. Like, that's unheard of. Um, and by the time I was settled in my job and I was beginning to get promotions, I looked around and this life that this person named Dina was living was beautiful, was great, right? Perfect. LA, the great job, the dream job, a cute car, great relationship. But I couldn't see myself in it. I couldn't see myself in it. I felt like every day I was just living this weird out of body experience. It's like, oh yeah, I know this is my body. I know that I, the soul, made this all happen, but it doesn't feel authentic. And then I began to ask myself some really deep questions. I would drive into the office or I would drive into work an hour early to have an opportunity to sit in a cafe before going into the office to just journal. And I would ask myself questions every morning, like, who would I be if this career didn't define my life? If money wasn't a problem, what would I want to do? If I wasn't afraid what my mom would think of me quitting this job, what would I do?
Yeah.
If I could just pause, how would I relate to myself? How would I relate to my body? And then at one point, everything just sort of came to a head. I was living in the US, working in the US on a visa as an expat. My visa was up for renewal, and our board chair sat me down and she was like, "We love you and we want to keep you around. We'll pay for your visa, we'll sponsor you, and also here's more money and here's a promotion."
Any
Like
normal person would have been like, yes, okay, great.
an expat's dream come true, right? And I had a nervous breakdown that evening. And I walked in the next morning with so much clarity, more clarity than I had ever had in my life. And I handed in my 2 weeks' notice. And I came home that day and I booked a one-way ticket out of the country to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam.
Wow.
Not the reason why I'm currently in Vietnam. That was a
Hmm.
backpacking trip to just sort of, get my bearings. But yeah, I just cold turkey quit. I had no plan. I just knew this ain't it.
Yeah.
This ain't it. And it was, sometimes you do the thing that you've been afraid of for years, but somewhere within the last few months, not doing the thing is actually scarier than doing it. There comes a tipping point, and that was that for me. Like staying in the job was like feels like a death sentence, right? Not because the job was bad, it wasn't great leadership, but because it was so out of alignment with what I wanted to do, with what I wanted to say, with who I wanted to become. So I quit.
I love that. Good for you. I mean, similar, and I won't get into my story, obviously, but I understand where you're coming from. And I think it's so easy for women to hold themselves back. No, 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 we're going to play safe. We can't do that crazy thing when in reality, that crazy thing is going to bring you closer to you. Sometimes we need to do that crazy thing that gets you out of the box. Otherwise, you're just going to keep remaining in the same pattern and you're not living.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk a lot about the mother wound.
It's so funny that you said that because you mentioned mother and I'm like, let's talk about the mother wound.
Well, let's talk about it.
For those that don't know, what is the mother wound?
Well, a mother wound is a lot of things. So actually, there is a book that I like to reference for all those who are interested, brave enough to read it, by Bethany Webster. She wrote a book called Discovering the Inner Mother. And I really like that term, the inner mother. Mother wound sounds really drastic. And I'll
Yeah.
say, looking at our relationship, especially as women, looking at our relationship to our mom, that's a drastic move. To dare to question what our moms told us, to dare to question our moms' beliefs about life and the world that at some point as children we have internalized, that takes bravery,
Yeah.
right? So there's truth to calling it the mother wound, but I really do love the healing term, discovering the inner mother, right? You're not only remothering yourself in healing the mother wound, but you're creating a whole new relationship. This sounds a little compoundy, but you're learning to relate differently to your relationship to your mom.
Mhm.
And I'll get into that. You asked me a question though, what is the mother wound? Well, it's the enmeshment of the daughter's identity with that of the mom. right? And it manifests in so many different things, right? Typically, you'll find that manifest when you feel as though you can't be yourself around your mom.
Mm.
When you weigh every decision that you make in your life against what your mom will think about it. When you change the color of your hair because of something that your mom said. I'm raising my hand for those who
I
can't
know.
see.
I'm like, how many women are like, oh crap, that's me.
Right. Like right now, I wear my natural hair color and I freaking love it. I adore it. I'm like literally in love with my hair. Not from a narcissistic place, but it took me a really long time to no longer dye my hair the way my mom dyes her hair.
Yep.
Right? So that's the mother wound. It's an enmeshment of your identity with that of your mom. I believe we all have the mother wound to an extent. We all have an opportunity to look at, okay, well, this beautiful caregiver called my mom, she raised me. And some of her thoughts I have taken on and thought that they are my own, but do I have an opportunity to examine these thoughts and do I really believe these thoughts? That's the surface level, right? And sometimes if we have a really healthy relationship with our moms, that's where we get to stop.
Yeah.
But sometimes we don't. Sometimes we become the caregiver of our moms emotionally, right? Way too early on. I'm not talking about when we were 50 and our moms are 70. I'm talking about when we were 5, right?
Yeah.
We become the parentified daughter and we take on an emotional responsibility that we're not meant to take on, right? So that plays out in many different ways in adult life, and I mentioned a few of them, right? It's when we weigh our decisions against what our moms will think about us and how that will affect the emotional well-being of our moms, because we haven't yet understood that in the same way in which I have to claim back the remote control over my emotions, I also have to give back the remote control to over the emotions of my mom to my mom,
Mm.
right? And that's the work of healing the mother wound is a disentanglement of identities.
Yeah, I love that description. And one thing I want to clarify for our listeners is just because you had a wonderful relationship growing up with your mother doesn't mean you can't have mother wounds. The thing is we are so impressionable between the ages of 0 and 7. That's when everything comes about, our beliefs, all of it, right? Our programming is what I'll call it. And as you get older in life, you start to question some of that. So again, you could have an amazing relationship with your mother. It doesn't mean she was bad. It means we're doing the same thing to our children and they're going to do
Yeah.
the same thing to theirs. We're just adopting at that age what we're being told. And so it's not a bad thing, but like you said, it's unweaving that. I say unlearning. We have to unlearn some stuff.
It's unlearning, it's deconditioning, and
Mhm.
there are two things I want to echo and to expound on in what you're saying. We all have a mother wound, right? We all have an opportunity to examine our relationship to our moms. And two things here. One, that doesn't mean our moms are bad. That doesn't mean that we have to begin to judge our moms. Like the whole process of looking at, ooh, wait a minute, that's my mom's identity. That's not actually my identity. That process has to be full of self-compassion and empathy for our little kid, our inner child, and our moms. Right? Like there's hate has no place in healing.
Mhm.
Judgment has no place in healing. In fact, it hinders it. Right? And a more right to the male listeners who may be tuning into the podcast, right? We're talking about the daughter-mother relationship. That's just a very, very primal relationship, right? And there's societal factors that factor into how a woman views her place in society, right?
Yep.
But every child has, to some extent or another, an enmeshed identity with their primary caregiver,
Mhm.
right? And a more all-encompassing term, of course, to look at that is trauma.
Yeah.
And you have trauma, I have trauma, the next person has trauma. My trauma isn't bigger than yours, right? I find that a lot when people are beginning to heal. It's like, oh, like it wasn't that bad. Like I don't actually have that big of trauma. And that may be true. You most definitely didn't experience everything else that the next person experienced, right? Your trauma is very unique to you, and you get to claim it, right? You get to find the wisdom within it. You get to find the lessons within it. And only by accepting what happened as having happened without a judgment, without having to blow it out of proportion or to diminish it. No, this happened. And in accepting it point blank, now what becomes available is forgiveness work. Now what becomes available is compassion and empathy. And what becomes available is, and I think Bethany Webster says this in her book, is the medicine inside the wound.
Healing.
Right?
It's healing. That's where the healing process
and in
begins.
order to heal trauma, you can't go around it. You can't
Yeah.
circumvent the trauma.
Yeah.
You have to go through. And what's inside of it is wisdom. What's inside of it is emotions that carry insights and knowledge and that want to be released. And the only burden about the emotions is they haven't yet been felt. Right? So my first coach said this to me. I always say is to my clients these days, the only way through is through.
100%.
Yeah.
So talking about the mother wound, it's funny because as you're saying some of that, I'm like, yep, 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 but without judgment. But one thing I started to notice over the years was my issues with money. Now, do I think that they've come from both parents? Yes. But a lot of times, even speaking with Denise, who I know is not here, when we were at, well, we spent a weekend together doing a bunch of stuff, and the conversation kept coming up of like, where do all these money issues come from? And whenever I would bring something up, I would go back to my mother.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the mother wound and money.
Well, I'll start there. So when it comes to any form of conditioning, right? Childhood trauma, conditioned self, internalized thoughts, limiting beliefs, the mother wound, right? We always want to look at, first of all, you have to allow yourself to become aware of the fact that a thought may not necessarily be fact. That it might be fiction, right? And then you want to look at, well, how do I know that? Where does that thought come from? And there are different ways to ask the question. I always like to ask this very broad question. Ooh, how do I know this? How did I learn this? And yeah, if as women we are in the midst of looking at our relationship to our moms, and typically, from our mid-20s to our mid-30s, that's I've personally found to be like the prime ages.
Yeah.
Typically that answer does end up being, oh yeah, like something that my mom did taught me that, or my mom always used to say that, right? Or that's just how my mom handled money, right? Or again, that's how my dad handled money, or that's how my guardian handled money, right? Like, oh yeah, like I learned that in childhood. And that's what we turn to, right? We come into this life and we're helpless, right? The human being as babies, we're helpless. We require help, right? So very quickly we learn adaptive behavior in order to keep ourselves safe. Oh, if I smile, I get milk. Oh, if I don't cry, then this. Oh, if I hide this emotion, then that, right? And as we grow older and older, all of this turns into something that started very innocently. Oh, if I don't cry, right? But suddenly, as we grow older, that turns into, oh, if I don't make more money than my mom ever did in her life, she'll always love me.
Yeah.
That's money in the mother wound.
So this one's a loaded question. How do you begin to chip away at that? Because I guarantee there are listeners going, oh my gosh, I have so many money issues and I can't attract more money, or I hit a cap on money, whether you're an entrepreneur or whatever it might be. How do you start to chip away at that?
Yeah. So if it's okay, I want to tell just a brief story because I feel like I haven't talked much about personal relationship with my mom, and listeners might be like, who is she to talk about this? So specifically to money, I have 100 stories to tell about me and my mom. And my mom and I have a really good relationship these days, but 2 years ago, that certainly wasn't the case. 5 years ago, most certainly not, right? And in the beginning of my business, I've always had really big goals. Like ever since I was a child, I've always had really big visions, right? And I remember as a child, some of these visions would be minimized, ridiculed, diminished by the adults. Not even just my mom, right? But just by the adults, like be realistic and all from a place of, oh, we just want to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Right, but that's yet another conditioning, right? Like, ooh, like growing big is unsafe.
Yeah.
Boom, another conditioning, right? So with our moms, I just mentioned earlier, one of the beliefs that we want to look at when we heal the mother wound is, are you afraid to rock the boat, to change the dynamic in your relationship to your mom if you were to become more successful, more wealthy, or differently successful in a way that your mom never did, never could, never had the opportunity to, right? So in the beginning of my business, like 6 months in, I had thankfully been able to generate quite a bit of money quite early on in my business, and that allowed me to just reinvest into the business and do a bunch of things. And I was hyper. I was like, ooh, if I can make like X amount of money within 6 months, I can fill in the six-figure amount within the next year. And I proudly shared that with my mom. And the response I got was, oh, don't get too greedy now.
Mm. Yeah, I can relate to that one.
And I didn't make a lot of money the next few months of my business, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So, you look at that, and that's the first question I would ask you. Well, are you afraid? Does it feel unsafe to become differently successful than your mom? Has your mom ever displayed a sense of creating distance between the both of you when you had a big success that she may never had access to? Did you ever feel guilty when you did something for yourself that you may have perceived to have affected your mom's happiness? Oh yeah, that time when I stayed away in Japan for Christmas. So what we have to look at is, well, where is the source of your innate unconditional lovability? Does your mom hold that remote control? And then what I like to do is, I call it positive projection, right? We project judgments onto others, right? We think of we judge ourselves as ugly, and suddenly the whole world is ugly. Oh, they're ugly, right? And it's easier to project a negative judgment onto someone else than to own it for ourselves. Well, we can flip that and we can look at, actually, I feel so much love whenever I pet my dog. There's just unconditional love. There's no hate I have towards my dog. Like, I just really love him. Is it possible for you to redirect that love towards yourself? Another way of looking at this is, if you were your own mother, what needs would you be sure to meet right now? And can you carve out some time to go ahead and meet those needs? Because what has to happen is we have to sort of give ourselves the memo, unlearn that we need someone else, not just our mom, but that we need someone else to fulfill our needs. And we have to unlearn that we could possibly do something to become worthy of someone else's love. We're all made of love.
Mm-hmm.
We all are love. We were created by love. We're made of love. We're all made of the same love. How could you ever not be lovable if you're made of love? But that's the authentic self speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, that authentic self gets covered up by our conditioned self,
Yeah.
right? And that's full of beliefs. That's full of judgments.
Mm-hmm.
That's full of internalized beliefs about the world, right? So these three things, I think I shared three things, right? Look at, oh, how do you know that to be true? Who told you that? And if it's someone who's not you, chances are that's not your actual belief about the world. Chances are there's an opportunity for more loving thought. And then follow it up with the next question. Well, who would you be without that thought?
Mm.
See if you can find a loving object, place, or being, animal or human, right? I always think of like Little Adam's Peak in Sri Lanka. I hiked up there once a few years ago and I had this beautiful meditation. For me, that's my unconditional loving place, right? So if
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little self-hatred-y, like little Adam's Peak, right? So find that object of love, that place of love, or that being of love, and see if you cannot redirect some of that love back towards yourself. And let's see if I can remember the third point that I made.
Even if you can't, honestly, that was a wonderful way because it just changes so much. Like it's not just about money. And I want people to see that. Like, yes, I brought that one up
Yeah.
for myself. But we have these beliefs that we have adopted that are not ours.
Yeah.
And we look at ourselves with judgment when we shouldn't be. And like you said, we are unconditional love. We are worthy just because we exist. But somewhere along the way, we lose all that. We develop these limiting beliefs and so much.
Yeah. The third point I just remembered, thanks to you jumping in.
Yeah.
Looking at if I was my own mother,
Mm.
what are the needs I would be sure to meet? And can I not carve out some time to go ahead and meet those needs, to sort of retrain yourself that you, in fact, are the source of the love that you need. You, in fact, are the source of the care that you need. Why? Because you're an adult now, right? And yeah, this applies to a lot of things, including money. Why? Because the way in which we relate to one thing is how we relate to everything.
100%.
If you have a fear of being abandoned by your mom, inevitably that shows up in your client relationships, that shows up in your annual reviews with your boss, that shows up in your romantic relationships, that shows up in your money. Maybe because you have a fear of being abandoned, you don't invest because once it's out of sight, maybe the money will just abandon you, so you just put it under your pillow. You see how it all connects, right?
Yeah. And that's why Denise and I are so passionate about this podcast because we want people to see that healing isn't just one thing. It's not, okay, so you're feeling this way, so go take this. Well, have you looked at, and I don't love the word mother wounds, but have you looked at that? Have you looked at the father wounds? Have you looked at your relationship with yourself? I love how you said, and I'm going to butcher how you said it, but if you were your own mother, what would you need or how would you be? Because I think that is so important to look at ourselves of what do I need in this moment? What do I need today? What do I need this week? And we don't do that. It seems egotistical to step back and say, well, what do I need in this moment? And can I honor that?
Especially for women, because we've been taught that like to put our own needs first, that makes us selfish, and we're supposed to be the caregivers. Well, guess what? You can't pour from an empty cup, right? So that's a dead argument. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, this has been such a beautiful conversation. Is there anything else you feel like our listeners need to hear? And I always put people on the spot like that. And sometimes there's not, but sometimes there's something that comes through.
I did musical theater for 11 years. I love the spotlight. Put me on the spot all day long. Well, to sort of wrap a nice bow tie or whatever around this conversation and probably butcher the phrase.
No.
What I just said, how we relate to anything is how we relate to everything. And typically the journey of healing is one of coming home to yourself. The journey of healing is one of recognizing that everything you need, the medicine you need, the fix you need, is inside yourself, right? So it may be really easy when you feel a body ache to go and grab some ibuprofen. Hell, like I want to do it once a month, right? But maybe a meditation can be just as healing. Maybe literally tuning into the pain and going, okay, you're back. It's been a month. What are you here to tell me?
Yes.
Right? Like healing is a journey of getting to know yourself, right? And you'll notice if you were to listen back to the podcast episode, if you wanted to do it a second time, right? You'll notice I ask all of these questions from a place of, well, how can you get to know yourself better, right? The medicine is in the wound. Do you have the courage? Healing takes courage. Do you have the courage to maybe spend 5 minutes less on social media and 5 minutes more just examining your body, doing like an internal body scan to get to know what your body feels like? Maybe instead of defaulting to the, oh yeah, mom, I'll be over on Thursday, like always, maybe you
Ask
put the
yourself if you
phone
want to do
down.
that.
Maybe you put the phone down for 5 minutes and ask yourself, well, what would actually feel like a really
Mhm.
loving act of kindness to give to yourself, to offer to yourself on Thursday evening? Maybe it is to go and have dinner with your mom, absolutely. And maybe it's not. So looking at healing as though it's a journey back to yourself has been really, really helpful for me, especially as I travel so much, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I'll just find healing in Bali when I talk to this guru. Well, but I'm still in my suitcase, right? Like all of my baggage, all of my trauma is still right there inside my
Mhm.
suitcase. So I can be as far away from home as as possible given the modern day technology. I'm still me. The
Yeah.
task of life, the task of, and the excitement about having this human experience still is to get to know this human experience, to get to know yourself. So that's my invitation. Get to know yourself.
I got chills. Like I just want to jump up and down if everyone could see me because 100% that is my belief. That is my truth now. And yeah, there's so many things I just want to say about this. I'll just state one thing. So there's someone I followed on social media for a long time, and she would always end her stuff with your life is your medicine. And I would go, what the hell is she talking about? And only in, I don't know, the last year did I start to understand that that medicine is us. It's everything around us. We are constantly looking externally for healing, physical healing. Well, this one thing happened and it caused this, or I must be deficient in this, or, yes, deficiencies can exist. But if we're really looking at what brings healing, it's not another thing or another person. It is looking within. Am I getting that time in nature? Am I getting the sunlight? Am I asking myself what I need? Am I spending time with myself? Am I digging into those wounds? There's so much in you that brings the healing. But you're right. People don't want to go through, they want to go around because it's too painful.
Yeah, but if you go around long enough, going around becomes more painful than going
It
through.
does. Eventually they get to that point, but sometimes it takes a really long time.
Or maybe another lifetime, you know?
Yeah. This was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you. I feel like we could have chatted all day, but I know we can't.
I'm really grateful to have been on and have this conversation with you. Thank you so, so much for having me.
Yeah, so I will put everything in the show notes as I always do, but I always like to ask, where can people find you if they're looking for you?
Yeah. Name is Way of the Founder. Instagram and my website is where you can find me. I have a bunch of freebies on both of those platforms. And if you come along on Instagram, just come and say hi.
Love it. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, listeners. You guys know the drill. We would love reviews. We would love feedback. Come to our Instagram, tell us what you want to hear about, and we will see you on the next episode.